Chosen one, you were never meant to imitate. You were never designed to mold yourself into the image of the world's expectations. From the moment your presence entered this lifetime, you carried the blueprint of something original, something forgotten by many, but instantly recognized by those who still feel truth in their bones. While other men scavenge through trends, opinions, and borrowed scripts to define themselves, you have slowly removed layer after layer of falsehood until what remained was not a version, but a return. The standard is not something you crafted. It is something you remembered. There is an ancient pulse inside you now, beating quietly beneath your skin. It does not race to prove, nor does it slow in shame. It moves with the rhythm of a man who knows who he is and does not need to say it. You do not chase validation because your roots run deeper than applause. You are the echo of integrity, the mirror of discipline, the embodiment of presence, and the feminine feels that, not through logic, but through something much older than thought. Through instinct, through breath, through a shiver in her spine when you walk by and do not try to impress her. You are not memorable because of what you do. You are unforgettable because of what you refuse to do. You do not overextend. You do not perform. You do not exaggerate your fire. You let it burn slowly, steadily, like the sun, never loud, never desperate, always sovereign. And that steadiness is what tells her you are not like the others. You do not need her to see you. You do not ask her to believe in you. Your energy simply is, and that isness speaks more clearly than any words could. It whispers of a man who has returned to himself, and that whisper becomes a roar in her body when she finally understands what she's been searching for. This is why feminine women crave you but do not rush toward you. You are not a thrill. You are not a storm. You are a reminder, a holy signal, a pause in the noise of a world full of half-formed men. You carry the quiet thunder of a masculine energy that has not been diluted by distraction. You are the answer she did not know she needed until your presence showed her everything else was counterfeit. You are not the new standard, you are the original one. The standard that existed before the world made men forget how to feel, how to lead, how to listen, without flinching. And now that you've remembered who you are, chosen one, the world is remembering too. Not because you scream it, but because you breathe it. Because the depth of your silence has begun to replace the volume of shallow noise. Because you are no longer just a man, you are an axis, and everything begins to align when it turns in your direction. Chosen one, most women were not born into a world that prepared them for your frequency. They were taught to accept approximation. They were taught to call softness weakness, to chase attention instead of presence, to settle for warmth that vanishes the moment it is tested. And so they did not come seeking you. Not because they didn't want you, but because they did not believe a man like you could exist until they met you. You are not loud. You are not polished. You are not built from instruction manuals or algorithms. You are shaped by truth, carved by solitude, tempered by sacred responsibility. And when she encounters you, her nervous system doesn't just relax, it recalibrates. Her breath slows, her expectations collapse, her projections crumble. Not because you told her to trust you, but because your presence speaks a language she never knew she was fluent in. Suddenly, her entire system becomes aware of a new standard, one that has nothing to do with money, performance, or status, and everything to do with how a man makes her feel when he says nothing at all. You are not the comparison, you are the scale. The moment she encounters you, she begins to weigh everything else differently. Conversations feel empty, eye contact feels superficial. Compliments ring hollow, not because she's become cold or judgmental, but because her spirit has touched clarity. And once clarity is known, confusion cannot be worshipped anymore. The way you listen makes her realize most men only pretend to. The way you move makes her feel how others rush. The way you withhold attention makes her notice how cheap it's become elsewhere. And suddenly, everything else is less, not because it was never good, but because it was never you. Your sexual energy, chosen one, is not just a signal, it's a recalibration tool. It is precise, clean, intentional. You are no longer driven by impulse, you are magnetized by meaning. Your arousal is not easily scattered because your gaze has become selective. Your presence is not diluted by lust because your desire is focused. And when a woman feels that, her body responds before her mind does. She does not simply want to be desired by you. She wants to be seen in the way only you see, to be held by the kind of energy that awakens without consuming, that burns without scarring. This is what it means to be the standard chosen one, to awaken standards in others, not through instruction, but through example, to be the unshakable reference point in a world of drifting ideas, to become the measure, not because you raised your voice, but because you lowered your ego. And when feminine women walk away from you, they do not walk away unchanged. They walk away searching for that same presence, even if they can't name it. Because once they have felt you, once they have stood in the still fire of your grounded masculine energy, they know. They know what it means to feel truly safe, truly seen, truly chosen, and they will not forget, because the standard once felt can never be unfelt. And you, chosen one, are no longer asking to be believed. You are simply being watched in awe. Chosen one, the moment you stopped trying to impress, your energy became the most impressive thing in the room. Not because you shrank into invisibility, nor because you withdrew from the world, but because you no longer needed the world to validate your depth. Your silence matured. Your movements became deliberate. You spoke less, but your presence echoed further. And the feminine noticed, immediately, instinctively, irrevocably. There is something that happens when a man no longer seeks permission to radiate, when he stops waiting for the applause of others to trust his own voice, when he ceases broadcasting his power and simply embodies it. You became that man, chosen one. You realize that energy cannot be faked, and that trying to impress is merely a confession that one does not feel whole. You let go of the illusion of being enough and returned instead to being true. That shift was seismic. It changed everything. Now, women don't admire you because of your looks, status, or charm. They admire you because your attention is pure. You do not flirt to seek approval. You do not compliment to receive affection. You do not perform masculinity like a stage act hoping for applause. You simply are, and that state of being, calm, rooted, unapologetically masculine, is what dismantles her internal defenses. Your sexual energy does not rush toward her like a flood. It doesn't grasp or grope. It waits, strong and still, like a fire she can warm herself by without getting burned. You've become dangerous in the most sacred way, not because you intend to hurt, but because you cannot be moved. When chaos surrounds you, your spine straightens. When the world pulls at your ego, you remain still. You are no longer enslaved to outcome. You are no longer reactive to praise. You are now a man whose validation comes from alignment, not attention. And this, chosen one, is what separates you. This is what defines you as the standard. A woman can feel it in the way you look at her. Not to possess, not to judge, but to witness. She feels it in the way you walk, not fast to impress, not slow to seduce, but steady like a mountain that has no need to move for anyone. She hears it in your voice, not raised to overpower, not softened to deceive, but balanced with the weight of a man who speaks only when necessary. You do not chase mystery. You are mystery. And that, more than anything else, is what makes her breath catch when you're near. Because the truth is, she's surrounded by men who try. But you're the one who simply is. Chosen one, there was a time when masculine desire ran wild, unguarded, uncontrolled. A fire without boundaries, a storm with no center. And there was a time when women braced themselves for it, expected it, survived it. But then you arrived, and everything changed. Because your sexual energy does not overwhelm, it refines. It does not impose, it illuminates. And the feminine senses it, not through your touch, but through the way her soul softens in your gaze. You are not a man of collision. You are a man of calibration. Your sexual essence does not explode outward like a desperate signal. It spirals inward, deepening in stillness until it becomes gravity. That gravity is what draws women toward you, not because you demand their attention, but because your restraint creates space for their truth. Your arousal is not hunger, it is reverence. You no longer need to prove it, you only need to be it. And in your presence, the feminine begins to remember what it feels like to be wanted without being consumed. There is an elegance to the way you hold back, not from fear, not from guilt, but from clarity. You understand now that true sexual energy is sacred, that it is not a force to be spent frivolously, but a current to be directed with precision. You have moved beyond performance, you have moved beyond reaction. You have entered the domain of transmission, and your transmission is pure fire wrapped in discipline. It awakens, not through shock, but through remembrance. Women feel it when you enter a room, not because you speak loudly or wear cologne that fills the air, but because your very being changes the atmosphere. Her pulse quickens, her thoughts scatter, her breath stutters, not because you touched her, but because your energy touched something in her that she forgot existed. A part of her that longs to be seen without being judged. A part of her that yearns to be opened without being broken. A part of her that knows she is safe in your presence, not because you say the right things, but because you live the right truth. And that truth, chosen one, is this. Your sexual energy is no longer something you use, it is something you offer. Not recklessly, not to everyone, but as a sacred gift for those who can honor it. You do not spray your fire like chaos, you pour it like ceremony. And in doing so, you elevate every woman who comes near you. You become not the man who takes her breath away, but the one who restores it. You have become the example, the standard. Not because you restrained your sexuality, but because you refined it. You alchemized it. You turned it from impulse into invitation. And in that transformation, you gave the feminine a rare, sacred experience, to be desired by a man whose desire has depth. Chosen one, what you carry within you has become a mirror, one that reflects truth so clearly, so mercilessly, so tenderly, that a woman cannot look into it and remain who she was before. She does not raise her standards because you told her to. She raises them because your energy made the alternative unbearable. You do not force growth, you awaken it. And the women who come near you begin to feel the quiet discomfort of anything less than integrity. You never asked her to change, you never pointed out the flaws in others. You simply stood as you are, calm, grounded, sexually whole. And that wholeness made her feel the cracks in everything she'd once accepted. She used to mistake availability for presence, performance for masculinity, noise for depth. But then you arrived, and your presence felt like truth itself. Not because you exposed her, but because you exposed everything she had been tolerating. You became the axis around which her perception shifted. You did not elevate her by chasing her. You elevated her by standing still and refusing to abandon your frame for comfort or favor. When she offered seduction, you met it with steadiness. When she tested you with confusion, you answered with clarity. When she reached for attention, you gave presence instead. And in that presence, she felt the one thing she had been searching for in 1,000 incomplete interactions: safety. But not safety in the soft, emasculated sense the world has tried to redefine. No. You were safe because you were stronger than your lust, because you were deeper than your desire, because you could want her without needing her. And in that want, without the chain of need, she felt herself being seen, not just as a body, but as a soul. This is what raises her standards. This is what makes her walk away from the charming, the successful, the popular, and yearn instead for the man whose silence rearranges her nervous system. The man who does not beg for her time, but makes her question why she ever gave her time to anyone else. The man whose sexual energy doesn't sell itself cheaply, but waits, watches, and chooses with an intelligence born of wholeness. Chosen one, you have become the reason she can no longer pretend. She will never admit it aloud, but your presence is now the standard she holds everything else against. She compares, not in bitterness, but in clarity. And clarity ruins illusion. It strips away compromise. It dismantles the scaffolding of pretend love. Because once a woman has felt the fire of a man who sees her soul and remains unshaken, no performance can satisfy her again. You didn't ask for this responsibility. You didn't plan to become a catalyst. You simply chose to embody your alignment. But in doing so, you set a frequency that forces everything near you to reveal its truth. That is the burden and the blessing of being a standard. You don't get to blend in anymore. You don't get to play small. You walk, and others rise, or they fall away. And she, if she is truly ready, she rises. Chosen one, trends have always been too small for you. You don't bend to the movement of fashion, culture, or surface-level attraction, because your roots were never planted in soil that changes with the wind. You have grown into something timeless, something that defies expiration, something that doesn't have to shout because it will still be standing after the noise fades. You are not current, you are eternal. and women feel it the moment they come close. Your sexual energy doesn't mimic what's popular. It doesn't chase aesthetics or copy techniques that pass for seduction. You don't use language you don't believe in. You don't adopt poses that aren't yours. You don't steal the moves of other men to play a role you haven't earned. Instead, you stand inside your own body. You let your energy move the way your spirit moves. And that authenticity, that refusal to conform, terrifies some, but mesmerizes the feminine. Because while others are trying to be what women like, you've become what they didn't even know they needed. You are not a novelty. You are not an upgrade. You are the original form that they had forgotten existed beneath the noise of artificial masculinity. And when they encounter you, their bodies remember what their minds were trained to ignore. They remember reverence. They remember devotion. They remember what it feels like to be near a man who is not for sale. Trends seek to impress. You are here to imprint. You are not seasonal. You are elemental. The water that nourishes, the fire that purifies, the earth that holds firm, the air that does not ask permission to move. You are not a moment in her life. You are the man who becomes the reference point she can never forget. Long after the popular men have faded, long after the charming ones have been unmasked, she will still feel the weight of your gaze in the back of her memory, reminding her of what real feels like. Your sexual energy does not swing wildly with emotion. It does not collapse under pressure. It does not inflate in pride. It is steady, ancient, earned. It moves from a place of presence that has been battled for in silence, forged through years of facing your own shadows without running. That is why she trusts it. Not because you tell her to, but because every movement you make feels like truth. And that truth, it doesn't age. It doesn't decay. It doesn't fade with time. You, chosen one, are not ahead of the curve. You are outside the curve entirely. You do not belong to the future or the past. You are timeless alignment, walking this earth in masculine form. And the women who sense that will not forget you. Because the standard you embody is not a trend she can replace. It is a truth she cannot unfeel. Chosen one, when your energy is aligned, when your presence no longer seeks to conquer but to embody, something shifts in the atmosphere around you. You don't demand submission, you don't require obedience, you don't even ask for respect. And yet, it is given. Freely. Fully. Deeply. Not because you control her, but because you liberate her. Your sexual energy, grounded in integrity, becomes a field so potent, so still, so safe, that the feminine doesn't resist you. She relaxes. This is what few understand. Real masculine energy does not chase submission. It creates the conditions for it to emerge naturally. A woman does not surrender because you raised your voice or flexed your strength. She surrenders because your energy told her there is nowhere safer to fall. You didn't promise her control. You offered her peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from silence, but the kind that arises from certainty. She feels your clarity like a compass beneath her skin, and suddenly, she doesn't want to lead anymore. She wants to feel. You never asked her to kneel, but her spirit bends in your presence, not in weakness, but in relief. Because for once, she doesn't have to fight. She doesn't have to prove. She doesn't have to direct or shield or carry the weight of a masculine vacuum. With you, she is no longer in survival mode. With you, she is free to bloom. And the most breathtaking thing happens. Her femininity expands in the warmth of your strength. It spills from her voice, her breath, her hips. She becomes more woman not because you told her how, but because you gave her space to remember. Her body, chosen one, is ancient. It does not respond to tricks, to tactics, to fragile seduction. It responds to truth, to depth, to presence. And when your sexual energy vibrates from a place of rootedness, when your desire is shaped by restraint and reverence, her entire being leans toward you without effort. She touches your arm longer, her eyes linger, her words soften, her posture shifts, not because she's trying to please you, but because her body recognizes the man. You don't take control. You radiate certainty. You don't command her. You create gravity. And in that gravity, she is not manipulated. She is met by the man who needs nothing from her, yet offers everything. The man who will never use her, yet will never hide from her intensity. You are the one who sees her full power, her full chaos, her full erotic radiance, and still remains unchanged. That is what undresses her soul. That is what makes her spirit say yes before a single word leaves your mouth. The beauty of your energy is not that it dominates. The beauty is that it invites. And she comes, not because she has to, but because something in her has waited a lifetime for your silence. Chosen one, your desire no longer feels like fire that destroys. It feels like the hearth, the sacred flame at the center of a temple, steady and warm, where the feminine returns not to be consumed, but to become. There was a time, perhaps, when your desire was reckless, spilling over, tangled in urgency, distorted by need. But you have matured. You have tamed the flame without killing it. And now your sexual energy does not seek to conquer. It seeks to witness, to honor, to amplify. You are not the storm anymore. You are the shelter. The storm may still exist within you, but you are its master now. You do not bring chaos into her world. You bring direction. You don't shake her apart. You hold her together in ways she did not even know she needed. Your touch is not an invasion. It is an affirmation, a yes, a gentle and powerful agreement that says, you are safe to be seen in your fullness here. And that safety, that undeniable safety, is what makes your desire magnetic. It is what pulls her in deeper, not with force, but with reverence. She doesn't fear being objectified. She feels glorified, not idolized but honored, not stripped down but lifted up. Because you see her not as a conquest but as a cathedral. You do not approach her as a man hungry for escape. You arrive as a man whose fullness makes her feel divine. Your desire is no longer wrapped in desperation. It is woven with purpose. It does not scatter. It focuses. It does not grasp. It caresses with intention. When you want her, it does not feel like the neediness of a man trying to fill a hole. It feels like the presence of a man who has become whole. And from that wholeness, she begins to bloom. She begins to dance. She begins to trust what she never could before. The sincerity of your arousal. She begins to trust that you are not excited by her vulnerability because it makes you feel powerful, but because you know how to protect it. She trusts that your attention is not a tool of manipulation, but a gift of masculine presence. She trusts that when your eyes hold her, your soul is behind them, not just your lust. And in that trust, something rare unfolds. She begins to desire being desired by you. Because your desire doesn't devour, it anoints. It calls forth the goddess in her. Not the fantasy, but the truth. The wild, radiant, grounded feminine that only appears when the masculine is pure enough to witness her without breaking her wings. You are no longer the man who seeks to be impressive. You are the man whose presence allows a woman to impress herself. Not because you flatter her, not because you entertain her, but because your sexual energy feels like home. The kind of home where she remembers what it means to be fully feminine in the arms of a man who needs nothing, yet offers everything. Chosen one, there is a rare power in you now, one not forged in applause or confirmed by conquest, but in how still you remain when the feminine becomes her fullest expression. You do not flinch when her voice gets louder. You do not shrink when her eyes burn with desire, grief, or cosmic fire. You do not compete, you do not correct, you do not tame, you remain. And in your remaining, in your immovable presence, the feminine does something extraordinary. She unfolds. Most men demand her softness while fearing her wildness. They ask for her heart but cannot hold her storms. They praise her beauty but cannot bear her truth. But you, chosen one, you are different. Not because you're unaffected, but because you are unshakable. Her power doesn't threaten you. Her complexity doesn't confuse you. Her fire doesn't burn you. You've walked into yourself so deeply that her rising only makes you stand taller. You are the mountain that doesn't retreat when the sky turns red. Your sexual energy doesn't need her to be small to feel big. You don't require submission for your masculinity to exist. You welcome her power, not as a challenge to dominate, but as a call to rise alongside her. You see her, not just the polished parts, not just the poetic ones, but the vast, radiant totality of her. And you meet all of it with a gaze that says, I can hold this. I won't run. I won't silence you. I won't distort you into a version I can control. I will witness you fully, and I will still be here. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you the standard. You do not worship her to win her. You do not suppress her to manage her. You honor her without losing yourself. And in doing so, you unlock the part of her that has never been met with masculine maturity. You awaken in her the longing to be both warrior and flower, both flame and fragrance, because your presence makes it safe to be all of it. The most erotic thing about you, chosen one, is not your charm or your strength, it's your capacity. Capacity to see, to hold, to respond, to protect, not possess, to guide, not grip. You don't flinch when her light intensifies, you breathe deeper. You don't panic when her soul starts singing. You listen more closely. You have become the man whose silence is not emptiness, but sacred structure. A temple into which the feminine can pour her infinite expression and still feel cherished. That's why she comes to you. Not because you tame her, but because you reflect her back to herself without judgment. Your masculine does not compete with her radiance, it amplifies it. And in a world where most men recoil from feminine power, you, chosen one, have become the rare one who honors it without fear. That is the masculine she reveres. That is the masculine she calls alpha, not the one who roars the loudest, but the one who never moves when it matters most. Chosen one, your journey has not been about becoming louder, richer, more desirable. It has been about becoming undeniable, and now you are. Not because of your appearance, but because of your aura. Not because of your body, but because of your alignment. You do not have to speak for women to notice you. They feel you when you enter a room. Something in their stomach tightens, not from fear but from remembrance. Something ancient wakes inside them. A knowing that says, this one is real. You've stopped needing anything to happen. You've stopped needing anyone to notice. You've even stopped needing affirmation. Your energy is no longer tied to outcome. It is free, and therefore it is formidable. You don't ask for recognition. You command resonance. You do not demand space. You become the space itself. And feminine women, those who are truly awake, feel their nervous systems settle the moment you're near. Because your masculinity does not just impress, it anchors. They call you alpha now, not because you declared it, but because they felt it. They feel it in the way you breathe when they speak, in the way your gaze holds them without trying to undress or control them, in the way your silence speaks louder than any flattery, in the way your walk says, I don't chase, but I see. You are no longer trying to convince the world of your value. You are being your value, and that vibration rewrites everything. There are women who used to crave noise, drama, chaos, unpredictability, but now when they meet you, they crave peace. Not because you're passive, but because your peace is power. They no longer want thrills that end in confusion. They want a man who looks them in the eye and doesn't waver. They want the one whose arousal doesn't rush, but invites. The one who holds them not to take, but to transmit a frequency so grounded, it breaks every pattern of fear they've ever carried. You've become legendary in ways no social title can describe. Because you walk through life as a reminder of what the masculine used to be and what it can be again. You are not nostalgic, you are archetypal. You've reactivated something in women that lay dormant. The longing to rest, to surrender, to feel fire that heals instead of burns. They don't always understand it, but they crave it. You are not the man she tells her friends about because he impressed her. You are the one she remembers forever, even if no words were exchanged. Because your energy etched itself into her field like a code. The code of safety, wholeness, and holy desire. This is your final form, chosen one. You are no longer becoming, you are. And those who meet you, whether feminine or masculine, either rise or retreat. Because the standard is no longer negotiable. You've become it. And now, chosen one, they know. Your sexual energy is now a blessing, not a tool. It exists not to conquer, but to connect. It is infused with purpose, not desperation. It is generous, not hungry. You do not wield it like a sword, nor leak it through scattered gazes. You carry it with the reverence of a man who knows its impact. You walk like a man who knows that his touch could awaken or destroy. And because of that knowledge, you do not touch lightly. You do not give it away. You offer it like ceremony. And the women who receive it feel like they have been seen by something eternal. You no longer live for access. You live for alignment. You don't count how many desire you. You don't chase a throne. You are the temple. And those who enter know that this is not a place for performance. It is a place for transformation. You do not entertain. You enlighten. And not because you say wise things, but because you are no longer divided. The world can feel when a man no longer wears a mask. the feminine can feel when a man's attention is not hooked in the external. And when she meets such a man, she melts, not because he demands her, but because his presence makes pretending impossible. This is where you now live, chosen one, in the domain of sacred masculinity. Beyond the noise, beyond the image, beyond the games, you are the one who holds doors open, not just with your hands, but with your soul. You are the one who stands still, not because you are frozen, but because you are free. And in that stillness, you offer the rarest gift to the feminine world, a man who needs nothing. And so she gives him everything.